No, no. That was the mother of one of the monks, an American. She was Baptist from North Carolina. She was living in Oregon, I think, at the time. And she became then, under her son's influence, interested in Orthodoxy, and she became this. She's Catherine's goddaughter, but I mean she died. She's died since then. But this is another woman from Gospel Outreach who became Orthodox, but unfortunately she left the church. Because there was no church near her at all, and so she didn't have any contact with anyway. But yeah.
And Gospel Outreach, is it the same as Freaks for Christ, Freaks or something?
Well, it's part. I mean, Jesus Freaks is sort of that encompasses a lot. I mean, that was just sort of like the beginning. That was these hippies that found Christianity and became. So that's sort of like a generic name for these,
for all small groups.
Very all these various groups that later became, of course, people grew up and they weren't hippies anymore or something like that. But that we sort of like, that's kind of a name. It's Jesus people or something, but they were non-denominational. They were so Protestants. They were, it was almost like Woodstock, sort of like festivals and things like that, and guitars and just this. But they were very serious. They were, they knew their Bibles backwards and forwards. But anyway, so okay, this is where we are in Lassen. That was one of the. But here they are with the. For this Katie, the older daughter, who was in my mother's arms. Yeah. Now this is in. Oh my goodness! You know what? You have to go.
We should
go to lunch otherwise.
So and by the way, you say so your mom was from Russia, so she came from Russia. She was not born in the U.S.
No. She was born in Russia in 1914.
So she came from Russia, and your father.
American.
Yeah. So she met him here when she
actually, it was really complicated because, with the war and everything like that, and the Civil War, her father disappeared in the First World War, and she had a twin, identical twin, and an older brother, and so her mother, who was very like an Anna Akhmatova type of, like very refined, anyway, but also, I mean, extremely both refined and also pious, which is anyway. But they had an estate in Finland that they had inherited. She had inherited, and so she went there, and on the pretext that's how she got out of Russia. That time, the whole family, the grandmother. I mean, my grandmother. That's how they all got out because they were fleeing during the. I think it's during the 1921 or something. They were under communists, but they were able to get out under the pretext of somebody settled. So they settled in Finland, in Terjoki, in a Russian colony there. And so she went there. But then my grandmother was renting rooms to people, renting out rooms so that she could make some money. And one of the women that's staying there was from Riga. She was played in the Riga orchestra, and so she became very, very good friends. And my grandmother converted her to Orthodoxy. She was Lutheran, I think, and then this woman, we call her Chichikatsa, she invited the family to come to Riga. To stay with her, and of course Latvia was a free country at the time, an independent country, and so they came. And then my mother finished high school, I think, there or something. And so, but my grandmother thought that it would be much more useful for the girls to. My uncle was sent off to. He went to Kadetsky Korpus, and so she sent the girls to England to be au pair girls because she thought, well, English is much more useful.
Au pair already existed.
Au pair, yeah. And then, but eventually, then my mother stayed. They were going to go to nursing school, but my aunt and my mother had inherited. They had inherited from my grandmother very bad varicose veins, ulcerated veins, and so being a nurse, you were on your feet all the time. So my aunt was getting homesick. So she went back to Latvia to Riga, and my mother, meanwhile, in London, she met my father had already become Orthodox.
Your father had already become Orthodox in London?
Not in London, here in Jordanville. And actually, Father in the Kinsey from the bookstore just came across in the archives this year an article in one of the old newspapers, and it said редкое торжество в Свято-Троицком монастыре. And it was my father's being received into Orthodoxy in 1941 here. And so he had been coming here. He was a student of Greek and Latin. That was he taught Greek and Latin. And so he traveled to, on one of his trips to Greece, he traveled to Mount Athos. Somebody suggested, and so he, with a college roommate, this was in the 30s, went to Mount Athos, and that's where he first encountered Orthodoxy. And then, I'm not sure when it was before, because he was studying in Paris at the Sorbonne. He heard Shaliapin sing at one of the Orthodox, so that also sort of, I think that, but he became very interested. And then when he came back here, he looked up in he was going to Columbia in New York City, Columbia Graduate School, and he looked up in the phone book, and so he found our Rocor Church in New York City. And I think from there, because the Brotherhood wasn't up here yet, and so, but it was Archbishop Vitaly Maximenko, who later became the first abbot here. So he sent, and then my father came, and I think he spent about 2 summers here in Jordanville because he wanted to learn Russian.
Okay.
Yeah, because he was very good with languages. He already knew French. He knew, so he learned. He taught himself Russian by reading War and Peace with a dictionary. So that was, this.
And the monastery. So he lived in.
No. Well, that was. I don't know whether. So he had some Russian, but he wanted to make it do it better. So he came here in the summers. I think he spent 2 summers here, and then from that, with his language ability, he was able to join the Navy during the war. In the war, he was in naval intelligence, trying to get secrets out of the Soviets. So he was based in London.
Okay.
And then started going to the church there, and my mother went to church, and it was Father Michael Polsky who was there, and it's very unusual, he had a Bible study for the young people, and that's where they met. And so then they got married within a year there. And so then my mother left, it was 1945. Right. She left on her honeymoon. She went on I don't know honeymoon. Anyways, they got married in January, and my aunt was arrested in March.
In Riga.
In Riga, yeah. So she went to the Gulag, and I mean that separated. They were, she was 10 years.
Why? For what kind of?
My grandmother was also sent, and my grandmother they interrogated.
From Finland.
No. She was also. Everybody was in Riga. In Riga, when the Soviets had taken over Latvia. So, and my grandmother, they were interrogating her night after night and couldn't find anything because she was the Damsky Komitet, and they accused her of hiding White Russian generals. So I don't know, was she possible? But finally, they just said, well, they couldn't find anything to really accuse her with. So they said, people like you, we just don't want. And so they sent her away. But she was very, her legs were so bad that she was actually very short time, and then they exiled. She was sent to exile, and then she came home. So she her, polny srok, she never, completed her. But my aunt was in Norilsk, and we have her memoirs I have it on the video. Yeah, it's really incredible. And then there she met a young woman who was a young communist. She had been sent away. She's 18 years old. She was put in solitary confinement for 1.5 years.
A communist?
Yeah, because she was a Stalinist. No, she was a Leninist. She didn't like Stalin. So, and she still had. I visited them. I was able to go there several. I mean, a few times. First time was 1968. I spent a summer in Leningrad. But anyway, this younger woman, we called Titinina, then she came in later when they both were released with Khrushchev's amnesty in 1953. Nina then also came and lived with them in Riga. And we're in contact with her daughter now. So I mean that's the only people we have left in Riga. But I was going to say, so this Nina, I asked her in 1991. I was interviewing my aunt, and I asked this to Nina whether she would say it was the first time ever that she had recounted